Hello and welcome to this special mini episode review of the One Up podcast. I'm Becky, I'm here with Andy, who is going to talk to us today about 12 minutes.
I know the truth.
I'm not lying.
I just said no more games.
I forgave everything, all of it.
Things like this just don't get forgiven.
So for those who don't know, the game takes place in a small apartment suite and it requires the player to repeatedly play through events of a 10-minute cycle and stars James McAvoy and Daisy Ridley, and also Willem Dafoe, who, as we had noted in our as we noted in our E3 episode, has finally forgiven video games for David Cage. So yeah, Andy, what did you think of it?
I'm sad to report that it is not good in capital letters.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm really bummed out because I was really looking forward to it. I think we all were. It's frustrating because it's a game that's got a lot of potential and you feel it when you're playing it, but it just keeps squandering it at every turn and it never seems to find a way to pull it back and salvage it. It's very frustrating.
Oh.
It's just a long, frustrating experience playing it.
Probably not helped by the time loop mechanic, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean that's a big problem. It's a great idea, but it's just implemented really poorly. Basically, it's a point-and-click adventure. One of the more modern style contextual clicks. If you pick something up or interact with it, you just do one click. That's pretty straightforward, but the loop itself, the puzzles, if you'd call them that, contained in each loop, they're pretty obtuse. It's sometimes you'll get new clues that help you progress in the next loop that comes along. They're more apparent in the dialogue options than when it comes to physical acts. With them, it's quite a crapshoot, really. You're just kind of tapping on things and hoping it does something new, whereas with the dialogue options in the next loop, they just pop up on the screen and they're really straightforward to use, but a lot of it took a lot of guesswork, and I did have to look up some parts online just to see the walkthroughs, because it was just so impossible to navigate what I was supposed to do next to progress the loop, because I kept hitting the same thing happening and it gets very repetitive.
Yeah.
The game, with the dialogue, it does kind of speed things along for you, when you try, because there's points where you have to prove to your wife that you're in a time loop, and each time you do that and you've got new information, it does summarises everything you've done before, rather than forcing you to go through the same process again, which was that was fine. It's that kind of highlights a problem with the writing, though. A lot of the writing is very much focused on the puzzle nature of it rather than the drama of the two characters. Yeah,
because I mean the setup is that it's kind of this relationship drama between James McAvoy and Daisy Ridley's characters. At least that's how it's been advertised, that obviously it's about them dealing with exceptional circumstances, which is a shame, because that to me, especially in a point and click adventure, it's a perfect very through which to explore that kind of stuff. It doesn't sound like it's succeeded very well.
Yeah, the writing really lets it down. It's very there's a lot of opportunities where you could really dig into the drama between what the husband character is learning about his wife through all the revelations of each loop, and the tension of knowing that Willem Dafoe's cop character is going to show up at some point and cause trouble, and try to work out how to get around that. But they didn't ever give the actors James McAvoy and Daisy Ridley anything to do. They're just kind of talking through the plot points rather than dealing with these revelations in any meaningful way.
Well, that's such a shame, especially when you have a cast like that as well. That's really disappointing.
And I feel like the writing is reflected in the performances, because they're not very good. It's a real letdown. When I saw that cast, I thought, oh, brilliant, them doing an indie adventure game. That sounds really cool. But they're all phoning it in, basically. Especially Willem Dafoe. He definitely feels like he just doesn't want to be there, but he's, the video game paychecks are too good to turn down now.
Is there any way we can blame that on David Cage, do you reckon?
I feel like whoever made this, I can't remember the name of the person. Like, you did all the research on that front.
Louis Antonio.
Yeah, I feel like he might be not quite on David Cage's level, but that same level of being way too impressed with themselves.
Yeah, because I noticed like a lot of the buzz is about the influences of like Hitchcock and Kubrick and Fincher, and whenever I see those three together, like cited as influences, there's always that little red flag that goes, oh, this could be very edgelordy.
It's not edgelordy. It's definitely like someone who's consumed all of those movies, but they haven't really learned what makes them work.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
It's like they've got like the mechanics of like a story, but they don't have the heart or like the human drama that drives them. It feels like when you get deep into these loops, you really start to get detached from the personal story, the revelations that are happening. And like they should have been the center point. There's a way to like write this story where you're progressing, like you're learning new things. You have to like it's encouraging you to learn more, but still having like an eye on what's happening between this man and his wife and like how they're looking at each other differently. Like, but it just really just drops the ball. It's so heavily focused on the gimmick. It just loses itself completely. And like there's another problem with it is the aesthetic, which is quite appealing at first. Like we all thought it was quite a cool look.
The top-down aspect.
It becomes a bit of it's an impediment at a certain point. Like it feels like they did it just so they didn't have to animate the characters' faces and like to help convey the emotions, because obviously the acting isn't pulling its weight, and like the visuals aren't doing anything either, because it feels very much like a PC game from the 90s, something like 1994's Dream Web, stuff like where the perspective is like it's top down, like you don't have to worry about drawing the faces, like conveying any emotion. But here, like there's no real excuse for that now. It just feels like they made a creative choice and they just stuck to it to the detriment of the story that was being told.
So there's not even like a thematic kind of appeal behind it at that point.
No, the really, like, I tried my hardest to try and find a reason why they made these creative choices, and I really couldn't, other than just like it being a unique selling point. That seemed to be the main driving influence behind a lot of the stuff that's being done here, and that just frustrated me even more.
Yeah, that's it's really disappointing, because like, Annapurna as well were behind one of my favourite narrative games in What Remains of Edith Finch. And, that's something where there's not that much, like, interpersonal, you don't get a lot of interactions with the actual physical characters, but the storytelling is so good that you kind of get swept up in it. And it's a shame that, like, for a studio that managed to work with that game and make it so emotionally impactful, just seem to drop the ball. When you've got people like James McAvoy and Daisy Ridley to do your acting for you, like, to not use them feels criminal. Yeah,
it like, obviously the aesthetic, I said, reminds me of the 90s, but the performances did as well. It was that era where, like, you got a lot of big names, but they were all really embarrassed about being in a video game. They feel like they were slumming it.
Yeah.
And that, obviously I got that impression of Willem Dafoe immediately, because, like, he's already had bad experiences with video games. No wonder his opinion's tainted, but it was really sad to see, like, James McAvoy and Daisy Ridley, they sounded so dulled, sort of thing. There's no like fire in the performances, but I think a lot of that was the writing and the way the story unfolded.
Yeah,
it let them both down. It felt like a throwback in like the worst ways, but I don't think the game realised it was doing that.
Okay, yeah.
We should probably get into the nitty gritty of the story, because that's a big part of why I don't like this game as much as I do.
Okay, so as a warning for our listeners who are intending to play this game and don't want anything spoiled, we are about to delve into story specifics. So if you want to keep the mystery alive after Andy's brief review, I'm not sure I do. So we can say goodbye to you now, and then you can check back for the rest of the episode after you finish the game.
I will say, please play it on Game Pass. Do not buy this thing on Steam or something, for God's sake. Yeah, I felt at least with Game Pass, you're only wasting your time.
Yeah. Did you get it day one on Game Pass?
I did get it day one on Game Pass. felt like I was doing something clever then, and I got kind of screwed.
Yeah. But still, at least we got to refer back to that running bit that we have.
I feel like it's going to be a continuing bit. Like,
Yeah.
hopefully it'll be with better games.
Okay, so spoiler segue.
Yeah, so early on you find out basically that the cop is a friend of your wife's father, and he's come for her because apparently she murdered her father and
Ooh.
stole a pocket watch. So like that's like a very early on thing. Like you find that out like within the first loop, and you start to learn a little bit more each time. But so like strap in. This is
I feel like I should be braced.
Yeah. Eventually you realise your wife did not murder her father. He actually survived the attack and was murdered later on. So he was attacked twice, basically. So, you know, if you're shot twice in the course of like a couple of months, you should really start picking up on maybe you're a bad person.
Or at least like go into hiding for a bit until people stop, trying to shoot at you.
So yeah, so it turns out that the real killer was your wife's half-brother, who was the product of an affair with your wife's nanny, who ran away like early on in her life, so she doesn't remember a lot of these details. So
okay.
Can you guess where this is going?
I don't know.
So it turns out you are the half-brother.
Oh god. I was I could see it, and I didn't want it to be that.
I started to, this is how I felt playing the game. I was like, oh, please don't do this. Please have something else happen. Nope. Yeah, it turns out you're the half-brother, and when you discover this, the pocket watch that's been like the centerpiece of the whole thing that the cop's been trying to get hold of, it begins to tick backwards, and it takes you back in time. That's where you see your character talking to the father. The wife's unaware of this whole family connection, by the way, because she was too young to realise it. But
does the half-brother know? Like when
the half-brother knows, because that's the centre point of the conversation with the father.
No.
Like he's telling her to stay away from his daughter, and the husband is like, I don't want to. A fight breaks out. The father pulls out a gun, but ends up getting shot himself. The weird thing is the father is also voiced by Willem Dafoe. And he's not doing a new voice. He's barely trying to conceal the fact that it's Willem Dafoe talking. Throughout the entire game.
But they're still two different characters.
They're two different characters because they put hair on the guy's head. Because maybe that's the whole point of the top-down thing, so you could clearly see there's hair on that head.
Okay.
That was the only reason I worked out they weren't the same character, really. It wasn't like the idea that he might have gone bald at some point.
Yeah.
So there's apparently multiple endings, but the ending I chose, and like this is the only ending I'll ever do because I'm not coming back to this game. I took this pocket watch and I interacted with it, and it turned back time again to like the night the father was shot, and I just agreed. Like the weird thing is this time the father was bald.
Okay.
And since it's voiced by Willem Dafoe still, I started to think I was talking to the cop, and then it took me a while to realise I was still talking to the father. I can't tell if that was a fuck up or maybe they were trying to create these parallels.
Yeah.
Because the cop character, I forgot to say, he was after the watch because he was going to sell it to fund his daughter's chemotherapy.
Right.
Because like they try to like create, he was like through multiple loops. This cop just murders both you and the wife.
Okay.
But I think they try to create a sympathy thing going on with him.
Yeah.
So maybe the game was trying to create a parallel between the cop and the father both crossing a line to protect their daughters, but I don't think they were, because they don't emphasise any of that enough. It's really hard to tell because like the game's pretentious enough to think that would be a clever idea, but the writing is so bad that I'm not sure they'd work that out themselves.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, my playthrough, I just chose to leave the sister alone. The credits roll. Like you're offered the option to continue on the menu screen, and apparently on other games, if you continue, you go back to the loop. But because I chose to leave the wife alone, I go into the apartment. It looks completely different. It's really barren. Like obviously because you never met the wife.
Yeah.
Or never continued your relationship. You're on your own now. But for some reason, the pocket watch is still hidden where the wife would have hid it had she gone through with the living with you.
Yeah.
But now the watch is broken and you can't do anything with it, so you can't go back. It makes no fucking sense at all.
Yeah, I'm like trying to like, you know, when you can see someone's gears working in their brain in a cartoon, and it's kind of how I feel right now, because that just seems needlessly complicated for a story that could have been like a lot more self-contained and like we talked about earlier, like focused on the emotion of this relationship. I don't get the rest of it.
Yeah, it just seems like a plot twist for the sake of a plot twist.
Yeah.
Just to like inject a bit of heavy drama, because like James McAvoy, bless him, he does go for a proper scream, but the rest of the performance has been so like muted. I never really, and the writing is like so detached from his conflict and like the experience, the trauma he's going through, living this loop over and over again and learning horrible things and remembering them. I just didn't buy into that scream, but like he went for it there. I'll give him credit for that. But,
but
it's just I just feel embarrassed, really.
Yeah, like what's the point of the incest? I feel
like that might be one of those edgelord things that you mentioned. Like,
yeah, that feels very.
But I feel like even Fincher wouldn't go with that. Like, maybe Kubrick would.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like old boy development, isn't it?
Yeah.
That kind of surprise, but without the impact.
Surprise, you're related and you're fucking
awkward.
Yeah, they did nothing to like make that work. Like, you spend so long just faffing about with puzzles and trying to get to the end. You're not really spending any time investing in their drama, their story. It's just such a shame, because it did look exciting, and I thought this was a really cool exclusive for Xbox. Something like a little different. It's not a AAA game, but it's got like a AAA worthy cast. But it's pretentious, and it's got nothing to say. It overcommits to an aesthetic at the expense of the storytelling. The cast, they all feel like they're embarrassed to be attached to a game. It's like the past like 10 to 15 years of video game performances have never happened. Where like you're seeing like Oscar caliber performances in games, and these are all Oscar like caliber actors.
Yeah.
It's a real shame, because like they have squandered a lot of talent and a good idea, and it's also too short for what its price tag would be if you paid for it. But it's also so obtusely designed, like it feels like it lasts forever. Because I had to check the walkthrough multiple times because I got stuck, and like there was just things where like turning on a light switch and then turning it back on again, or turning it off again and turning it on. I can't remember what it was. There was something with a light switch.
Yeah.
And if you hid, then you had to hide in a closet, and if you like waited, the cop would come in, he'd turn the light on, he'd get electrocuted and pass out, and then you could interrogate him. There's no way of like detecting that, because that clue is dropped like in the first loop, but you don't get to do anything with it until much further in the game.
Yeah.
So I had to check and like read and say, what the fuck do I have to do? Because I keep getting killed. And it's like, yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah. It sounds so frustrating.
Yeah, I was intrigued at first, but that intrigue just got sapped away over time.
Just to go back to What Remains of Edith Finch, you can have a complicated narrative and sort of weird and wonderful mechanics and things going on, and it's still like work in conjunction. You know that a good concept and a good story are not mutually exclusive. But you have to pay attention to both of them and make sure they feed into each other.
Yeah, it really feels like this was a game made by a game designer, but they didn't have the chops to write a good story.
Yeah.
So like there's all the trappings are there for like a really good puzzle game with a good like central gimmick, but it's hinging on the idea that the story is emotionally compelling and gripping, and it's not. It's half-assed at best. If I'm being generous, it's half-assed.
No.
It turned like a game with a lot of potential, and like it could have been a really good like indie thriller, like a little tightly packed, like clever, intriguing emotionally compelling like thriller, and it's just a fucking slog, really. I don't know how anyone could unless you were getting paid to do it for like a job, like writing walkthroughs and stuff. I can't see any reason why you'd be compelled to like play this game multiple times.
Yeah, which is clearly what they were going for with the multiple endings and decision trees and stuff.
It's really disappointing. Like I don't know if we're going to do like ratings on these reviews. I don't think we've thought that far ahead, but like if I was going to do that, I don't know, fucking 4 out of 10, D+, no thumbs up.
I think that's fairly comprehensive.
I'm gonna, please play something else.
And if you're going to play this, play it on Game Pass. But you've missed day one now. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't even have that simple joy of clicking down install on day one. That was probably the best part. I was like, oh, I'm doing this day one on Game Pass. It took me like maybe a week to complete it. I just kept I'd do a couple of loops and I'm like, I can't be fucking arsed with this. It's bad. Don't get it.
Well, if you made it this far into the episode, 12 minutes, not a one-up pod recommendation.
Absolutely not. Spend your 12 minutes doing something else.
Whee! Okay, thank you for listening to our little mini review. These are obviously a new format for us, so any feedback is welcome. I'll set Andy on you if it's really awful though, just as a warning. And you can
bite.
You can find us on Twitter at 1UPPOdd, and it would be great if you could rate and review and subscribe and all the things on your podcast catcher of choice. But in the meantime, get a life, play video games.